Hey everyone, today's video is going to be a very personal one. I'm going to be sharing with you my relationship and journey with eating disorders, specifically bulimia, orthorexia, obsessive working out, body image problems, and food control. This is an extremely emotional subject for me, so stick with me. But I think it's important to get my story out so that if any of you are struggling, you don't feel so alone and know that it's possible to get past it. And also to shine light on the darker parts of the entertainment industry, because body image is such a huge factor, and the mental health around it, it is a very classic problem and has been around forever. But I do really want to look at every aspect of this career, the good and the bad. Before I start, I do want to give a trigger warning. This video will discuss eating disorders, everything I personally went to, and a lot of body image problems. So if you're sensitive to this kind of subject or this might trigger you, maybe reevaluate if this video is right for you. Remember, mental health first. I also want to say before I start, in no way am I doing this video to get some kind of attention back of, oh my gosh, poor you, and I can't believe you went through that, and etc. That's not at all my intentions. I really just want to share my personal struggles, again, to be able to connect with anyone that might be going through something similar. I did shoot this sitting on a couch and not in front of my screen because I do feel like this is a more personal, vulnerable subject. So I wanted to be in a more comfortable, realistic setting to talk about this. One last side note, so many disclaimers on that note. I do have a very dark sense of humor. The way I cope with a lot of tragedy and personal hardships is through humor. So if at any point I'm making jokes or laughing about this, it is in no way because I am making fun of it. It's just personally how I swallow this pill. Yeah. If you haven't watched my video on my personal journey through my career, then I will let you know now that when I was very young, around 8 years old, I got into an intense ballet school. This is kind of where things started for me, and that little seed got planted of, oh, being thin is a good thing. If any of you have been in the ballet world, or I'm sure even as spectators, you could imagine it is a very strict world, and body image is such the center of it. I mean, it's changing now, and I love to see now in companies they have more healthy, muscular, athletic women. It warms my heart because it really is a problem. Gymnastics is another close sport that also develops these kind of problems. You know, you have these young girls in nothing but leotards all day. How could we not develop body image problems? But it was about 10 years old when I started, I'll say, dabbling with my eating disorders. We were kind of encouraged at the studio I went to, and I'm not saying that they at all were the start of this, but, you know, we were told to graze and maybe not eat as heavy as meals and, you know, eat a lot of carrots and celery. And we weren't given information at all pushing starvation onto us. But the mentality that I had in my personality was kind of a all in, go hard, even at 10 years old. So I took that information and ran with it. I saw who I was dancing with, and then the stars in companies, you know, who was the lead, who was the front and center. They always were bone thin in the ballet world. So I was like, it kind of clicked that I was like, to get to a certain level, my body has to look a certain way. So I started changing my diet heavily around 10 years old. Now, my sister and I kind of did it together. We both went to our parents and said, you know, we're really serious about ballet. We want a diet to support our art. And in that mentality, my parents were so supportive. You know, my dad had recently gotten a stent put in his heart. So we kind of as a family were looking to change our diet. Now, what my parents didn't know is that behind their back, I was going a little extreme. You know, we had a lot of white rice, baked chicken. I was doing Honey Nut Cheerios in the morning, but I would measure out my Honey Nut Cheerios to be exactly 1 cup, and then I would measure my milk 1/2 cup, my non-fat milk, because it was all about calories. And I kept a secret notebook in my room, and I was secretly counting my calories. So I was trying to only eat 600 calories a day around 10, 11 years old. Horrible, I know. And so, you know, I was still in elementary school, and I would bring one sandwich, but I would milk it as long as I could because everyone normally had sandwiches and then a snack and then a little dessert. And I remember sitting in the lunch yard and just trying to eat as slowly as I could so I had something to eat the entire time. And this definitely weighed heavily on my personality. I will say any parents with kids in any extreme sports, some signs to look for is I was a very talkative, energetic, positive kid, and I started getting very quiet, low energy, just hungry, A lot of my teachers noticed when they would ask questions in class, I wasn't raising my hand anymore. I didn't have the answers. I was just kind of very shut off. So that is a huge sign, of under eating. You have no energy. And then also recently I found some short stories that we had to write in school. I still, again, was at the age where it was creative writing. And all of my stories are very dark and tragic. I just found them actually and read them with my parents. And I was like, you guys, like, what the actual hell? Like, this is horrible. And they kind of were like, we just thought you're creative. And nothing against them. They really just didn't know. But every story was a girl being abducted, someone being murdered, someone being hospitalized for an eating disorder. Like one of the stories I literally wrote out about two sisters, the exact same age as my sister and I were, and one just not seeing it in the mirror that her body was thin enough and she ends up getting hospitalized. And I wrote this at 10 years old. So I definitely look at it now and I'm like, wow, this was, a cry for help. I did luckily get out of the ballet world. I want to say around 14. I just started feeling the mental way of this craft. It is a very emotionally draining, can be abusive art form. And it just wasn't for me anymore. I just was kind of like, I'm done. So when I went to high school, I started eating normally. I mean, I still would kind of be like, oh, I'm on a diet this week. And, it was always part of diet culture. I never really completely shook that. But I was hanging out around normal kids and eating cookies at lunch. And it was great. I went through puberty, gained some weight. And it wasn't until fast forward, got my job at Disneyland, started doing circus. That was all peachy keen. I moved to New York City when I was 18. And this is when this all kind of crept back in. When I moved to New York City when I was 18, I was enrolled in a very intense dance program. And that's kind of when everything came back. I was dancing 40 plus hours a week, so much. And I was starting to watch my diet again, which as an athlete, that's very appropriate. You want to make sure you have the proper nutrition to support your sport or your art. But, that's a very slippery slope into obsessive food control and body dysmorphia, which I developed at the young age of 10. Like that never did leave me. I did always kind of have routines of checking myself in the mirror, lifting up my shirt. It's a heavy habit. I still will be completely honest. I do it today. It is most mornings I wake up, pee, and lift up my pajama top and look in the mirror to just check. And I do. It's almost when I do that now, it's so hardwired into habit. But now luckily I'm at a point where when I do it, no matter what's under there, I'm like, okay, that's where I am today. Or I stop myself, but it's still an addiction and it's something that I do have to handle every single day and decide how I'm going to deal with it every single day. So once I was in New York, I was dancing more. I started watching my weight. I started losing a lot of weight because I was just dancing so much. Like this 17 to 18 was definitely the year I shed my baby fat, and I liked it. I was like, oh, this is fun. But I remember the exact night. I do. I remember the exact night it began, and I was out karaokeing. I went to like a bar and went to karaoke, and I was with two friends that were in my program. And even though I was 18, I was underage drinking. I'll put it out now. I had an old friend's ID. And so I would very rarely drink in New York just because I was so strongly intense into my program and my career was like my number one. So I was like, I'm not messing this up. But I had one night a week that was the night before my day off. I think I took Saturdays off. So like Friday night, I was like, it's game. So I was out one night and I drank a bit too much. at that point, I probably couldn't even hold my liquor that well. So who knows how much it was. But I drank a little too much and it made me sick. So I was like, oh, I think I'll feel better if I throw up. And it wasn't much of a chore because the alcohol just wanted out. So I threw up. And when I did, I saw my dinner come up. And I was like, oh, well, I feel better because now all that cocktail garbage, who knows what I was drinking at 18. Ugh, don't even want to think about it. But it kind of clicked. I was like, oh, well, I feel better because everything I ate tonight is now out. And that kind of started that wiring, if you will. And from then on, I didn't do it a bunch, but it would start to be like if I had a drink, I would be like, oh my God, I drank too much. I need to throw up. And I saw it slowly turn into like, I'd have a glass of wine and I'd be like, oh my God, I drank. I need to throw up because I drank too much. And it was like, but the drinking was less and less. And it just became one of those excuses to be able to do this because what I really wanted was to feel obviously like control. It's a control thing. And I wanted to feel like I had control of, ironically, myself, which this was the most out of control thing I could have fell into, but control of myself. I was in an industry where there is no control in entertainment. You are constantly working so hard, but you're constantly met with rejection and, you have classes, say every Tuesday, Thursday, I'm in a specific class. Every Wednesday, I take this class. But when auditions come up, that schedule changes. And so control of, I guess, schedule, control of also my success. That was I was getting to a point where it was turning into first the excuse. And then I was like, well, I'll do whatever it takes to climb to the top mentality is what I remember slowly taking over. And I was like, this is going to give me that edge. This is going to make me more desirable, hireable. I got attention more once I started getting really, thinner in the program, and people like, wow. And I also was becoming a better dancer because I was training so much. And so I think some things in my mind bundled as like, oh, I'm getting positive reinforcement, but it happens to be during the same time I've started this really unhealthy habit. But I don't think I really differentiated that. That kind of is how it started. And it was a slow burn, I will say. It wasn't all the time, but I definitely once, I would do it. I would do it a little more and do it a little more. And I kind of saw how easy it was. It was not fun. It's like kind of ironic side note. Like I still to this day feel this way, but I used to always say when I was younger, like, oh my God, the worst feeling in the world is throwing up. Hated it. Like it takes a lot for me sick-wise to get sick. Like I have to have the worst GI, stomach flu, food poisoning to actually throw up, or else I'll just sit nauseous, but it won't. And it's kind of, I don't know, I always laugh about it that I'm like, oh, that's ironic that the one thing I chose to do was throw up because, I just used to hate it so much as a kid and I really do, still do now. Yeah, I remember then also once I kind of lost the excuse of, oh, I had a drink. The first time, I can't remember exactly when it was, the first time I did it without having drank, and that excuse was gone. And I was like, okay, it kind of gave me, I guess that control of myself in a sense that like my diet was always very strict. I didn't either eat a lot or it was very clean. I mean, clean. I remember like eating a can of garbanzo beans for dinner. That was a very classic dinner for me in New York City. But it gave me the time to like, when I would go out with friends and go to a restaurant and I could eat what I wanted, because of course I wanted to have the pizza or have the whatever I had, and I could be in the social setting where I'm not going, oh no, I can't eat that. And then I could just like take care of it later. It's kind of where I was at with that. That became a slippery slope of like what I considered, oh, I had a bad thing tonight to eat. It literally got to the point of like, I had an apple extra today and I shouldn't have eaten that apple. Like it breaks my heart to say this, but the amount of times I've had an internal struggle over an apple, that was like a constant theme. I don't know why. But I do remember the first time that was my struggle in New York was this apple, 60 calories more. So I don't even, it's just, it got to that point. It definitely got to that point. And that's kind of, I think, when I lost control I don't think I had control before. I think I this whole time lied to myself and thought, oh, I'm fine. I was like, I'm not bulimic because I don't do it enough. I can't sit here and be like, oh, woe is me, I'm struggling or have this problem because other people do it way worse and they actually have the problem and they have to be hospitalized. I can stop if I wanted to. Classic, right? Like it's interesting. I don't know. I'm able now to look back at this all as a completely outside perspective and form opinions and be able to speculate differently. I will say a lot of it is interesting to me from like a psychological standpoint, but I think so much more at this point in my life too, it wasn't just about I need to look a certain way. It was kind of back to what I said, like I'll do whatever it takes. And that's something I've read in a lot of my past journals. I journaled all through this time and it's very interesting to read. It's just, I mean, I didn't date during this time. I did go out, but it was I remember thinking like I would sell my soul to the devil to have this success. I thought that as a child even. Like I remember just being like, I don't get to have a normal life because I'm promising to myself now everything goes towards this. It wasn't even like I want to be famous. It just was this thing. And I think that was really what had the hold on me, was that ultimate sacrifice I thought I was making. And it's kind of ironic or funny, I guess, that the only thing you're sacrificing is like yourself. And if you don't have yourself, then what's the point of the goal, you know? So there's kind of a weird, I mean, there's a bit of a mental disorder here, obviously. So I know I struggled through that, but yeah, that was the beginning of it. And that was New York. For those of you who don't know what bulimia is a potentially life-threatening eating disorder. People with this condition binge eat. They then take steps to avoid weight gain. Most commonly, this means vomiting, purging. But it can also mean excessive exercising or fasting. My first job out of New York was my cruise ship contracts that I did. And my first cruise ship contract was very much a struggle. I definitely was still battling heavily with my bulimia. I would go in and out of phases. We had specialty restaurants on our cruise ships that sometimes my cast and I would be like, oh, hey, we have the night off tomorrow. Let's go to the specialty French restaurant. Let's go to the specialty Italian steakhouse. And it was like $40 for like a 5-star 5-course meal. I mean, the food, you would roll out of there like so full. Definitely always threw those nights up. And I laugh. I went to those restaurants a lot, but it was a way again to give myself the permission to enjoy life. It's kind of, now that I'm talking, I think some things are going to come to realization as I share this with you. It's kind of why I guess talk therapy is so good, because you start to put it out as you say and you're like, oh, I get it. But I think I didn't really give myself permission to fully enjoy things. And so it was like this weird way for me to give myself permission to enjoy a moment, but then take that back after. And it kind of goes back to that anything for my goal, everything for the art, all the sacrifice and, sign my soul away kind of mentality. I definitely struggled a lot on my first cruise contract. And it wasn't until later that I was reading back on, I have these journal entries. And the first time I found them and read through, I forgot, how toxic my relationship with myself was. And you would have never guessed, like people I was on this contract with would never guess how deep of a struggle I was going through. I didn't even realize it. I thought it was just this little side thing. And then I was having this amazing time, performing. I was in Greece and Italy and Istanbul and having the time of my life. I was 19. I turned 20 on this contract. So that's about the age I'm at. But again, it's just, I think it's a mix of the personal success, the control. Cruise ships are, your life is not really yours when you're on a cruise ship contract. You are on someone else's schedule. They can always call you. If it's your night off and you're going upstairs to one of the restaurants, the hotel director might be like, I don't like what the girls were wearing, or, it's just everything is manipulated. And so again, this gave me a little sense of, I guess, control. It's interesting to me in these that it was really this, like, I felt like this Jekyll and Hyde. Like, my journals would always flip-flop between writing of me, me, to we, us, I'll take care of you. And I kind of wrote as two people almost. And I don't know, maybe that's like the self and ego, like battling out. I'm sure a psychiatrist could kind of give me a insight to that. And I have dove into that a bit in therapy. And, but it does flip flop. And I'm always very intrigued from a psychological, again, outside perspective on myself when I flip the me to we kind of writing. But reading back, it really is. I was like, God, I remember the time I was just like, this is a really toxic relationship I was in with myself. And it kind of shows when I look into then the next few years, 5 years, 10 years, how things went. And then like my personal relationships I would get into, be it friendships or romantic, I would kind of fall a lot into, well, I wouldn't say like my friendships were super like manipulative or, I had great friends, but I definitely fell into a much more submissive role in relationships. And then romantic relationships, there was some that I did fall into that were not good for me at all. And I just didn't know it. But it's weird when you're beating yourself up, you kind of don't see the external punches coming at you as well. You know what I mean? So there is that. Fun. This is about the time though. I do want to say through all of this that something that was difficult, and I'll continue reiterating this in my little story. When I started getting on, it was this cruise ship contract. I was working out like crazy, throwing up when I ate bad. Something that was very interesting to me, and I have kind of talked through this in therapy. And a reason I think that a lot of this kind of continued is there was also this other wiring in my head that what I was doing got positive reinforcement, again, which I had mentioned earlier. But I started working out crazily, obsessively, which I said in my description about bulimia, and also kind of just recently with my new therapist have discovered that I didn't realize that bulimia nervosa isn't just binging, purging food. It's also maybe eating a lot and then obsessively working out after. That's kind of the purge. So it can come in different forms. I didn't know that. But of course I would do that. I forgot to mention this story, my working out. Like I would start also like punishing myself in the gym. And so that was also going on. I was getting more and more into fitness. I'd never really stepped inside of a gym before. My dance room was my only gym, and we had full access to a gym. I'd just done this crazy boot camp for this contract where we're lifting weights, getting strong. So I started getting into like my version of workout programs, but it would, I would go up into the gym, and it was, if I did eat something and say I didn't throw it up that night, or even did, it was like, okay, well, I'll wake up tomorrow at 6 a.m. and go straight to the gym and spend 1 to 2 hours there. But in doing so, of course, I started getting very fit, and I started developing a six-pack. I was very ab crazy. I don't think one day went by for like how many years that I didn't do like this intense ab routine. And I was like, abs every day. And now I'm like, no way. I can't remember the last time I did a crunch. But the guests on the ship started coming up to me. They'd watch our production show and they're like, oh, you're the girl with the six-pack. Oh my God, it's amazing. And everyone's like, oh my God, Gelsey, your abs. And it's silly, I don't mean to be like, my abs, but it was this like, oh, I'm getting positive attention for the result. And yes, there's a healthy way to do it. I didn't really know how. But that kind of, affirmation. And again, at the end of the day, I think a lot of this just comes down to wanting love. That is something I've worked with my recent therapist, and we're kind of like figuring out the why. And I think the why is so important. Like if you are struggling with any of these problems or have thought about it, it's getting down to the why is really important, because once you understand the why, you can change the how. at the end of the day, if what I am searching for is love and acceptance, then there are a lot of other ways I can get love, or I can look around and really open my eyes to how much love I do have surrounding me and that I do receive every day. And it kind of turns into, I don't mean to be so like stereotypical woo-woo and being like, let's have gratitude, but it does. Like when you can really stop and have gratitude and for the things of the why and realize what you already do have, it can maybe help you on the how journey. Back to being loved. Yeah, I was starting to get an identity. It's another thing. I was starting to really gain an identity through this image, which was the result of unhealthy eating habits. After that contract, I had like a 6-week contract continued throwing up through the whole thing. And if it wasn't extreme binging, it was extreme fitness gym workout and, just a lot of, I would have a great time until I feel like I went too far. And the next day I would spend the whole day just beating myself up. Again, just a very abusive self-relationship. Now, the next contract I did is where things kind of switched for me. And I thought I had healed. I thought I was saved. I thought, all these things. I did get into a relationship on my cruise contracts, and looking back, I didn't get the support I really needed. We all are just doing the best we can, and I think he was too. And he was the first person I told about this, which I was really scared to tell anybody because I thought I was going to appear weak or that I was appearing like I just was crying for help and looking for sympathy, looking for attention, which I wasn't. That's why I kept it to myself for so long, is because I never wanted to come across as like, oh yeah, poor me, which is like what I don't want this video to be about. It's not at all what it's about. But I think I just, I was crying for help internally, and I just was screaming for that saving and that savior. And when I finally disclosed it, I didn't really get met with the response I wanted. I didn't want the poor you, but it was met with a joke and being like made fun of almost, and kind of like, well, that's dumb, but I can't stop you from doing it. And that, I don't know what the right response is, to be honest, but I can tell you it just wasn't what I was needing. Therapy, I should have been in therapy, but I wasn't. But at that time I was also very vulnerable. So I kind of had a heavy influence from him to get into the bodybuilding world. And hey, you should work out like this. This is a classic bodybuilding split program. We'll do it together. And hey, you should eat like this. And it was in a positive way at first that, I was being encouraged to eat more. He's like, you girls don't eat enough. You should be eating 6 meals a day. You should have more protein, more. And I was like, yeah, okay. And I saw these bikini competitors, the result of what this lifestyle looks like. And then I became obsessive. Like I think at the time bodybuilding.com was like a newer website. I think you have to pay for it now, but it was all free. And the articles and information on there is endless. I mean, it's awesome if that's what you want to get into, and there's a great, healthy way to do it. But it's also a very unhealthy, damaged, toxic world. I will just put that out there right now. It is filled with body dysmorphia, obsessiveness, orthorexia, obsessive working out, like it's such a respectful thing in a sense that it's amazing what these people can do to their bodies. I did it to mine. It takes a lot of dedication and work, but there is a huge mental health toll, in my opinion, at the cost of it. But I kind of fell into this new lifestyle, and I started going, okay, I'm going to eat 6 meals a day. This many, I was like, ooh, macros. I'm counting my carbs and my proteins. And I thought, oh, this is nutrition. This is healthy. And I'm working out, and I thought, oh my God, I did. I stopped throwing up, and I was like, oh, I'm healed. My boyfriend saved me. I chose this new, healthier path. What I didn't realize is that it was kind of one addiction for the next. I wasn't doing this anymore, and I filled it in with this. And well, what I didn't realize is that just because I stopped throwing up, some of my bulimia continued in the binge excessive exercise purge that never stopped. And I didn't realize that at the time. And then also I I mean, I was in the gym every single day. On top of I was still doing my cruise ship shows, but I was working out like crazy. I'd wake up at 6 a.m. to go to the gym. I'd have to do 2 shows that night. And it was like everything was logged, what I ate. I got an app, and it just became all I thought about. All I thought about was, well, if I eat this now, that saves me 600 calories for later because I'm not going to put this on that or that. Or if I eat the bigger meal now, well, then I can't eat that thing I was going to have for dinner. That was going to be more calories, but I could cut this later. I mean, it's all I thought about. When I was in my room on the internet, all I did was read articles on nutrition science, health science. I mean, it was interesting. I learned a lot about the body and how it broke down food. And, I knew down to amino acids and how everything reacted to the proteins and why you shouldn't eat fat after a workout, but you should eat fat in the morning, and then why a simple carb versus complex carb, and just all this stuff, way more now. I've honestly forgot a lot of it for the better. Through this, I kind of fell into, I would say I had extreme body dysmorphia already, but I got to the point of like weighing myself every single day, and if like 0.5 pounds got put on, it was straight to the gym or just like kicking myself and beating myself up all day. Which before, when I was like a teenager, I remember being like, I'm in a 5-pound flux. Like I'm either up 5, down 5. And I'm like that today. Actually, today I don't weigh myself. Like when I go to the doctor and they're like, all right, get on the scale, I close my eyes because I know what my personal triggers are, and I just choose to live without them because F this stuff that I'm talking about in this life. Like I'm broke out of this prison, and it's nice to be on this side of it. I did develop kind of, I have all my other problems I'm dealing with, and I kind of fell into orthorexia.
Orthorexia nervosa is perhaps best summarized as an obsession with healthy eating with associated restrictive behaviors. The attempt to attain optimum health through attention to diet may also lead to malnourishment, loss of relationships, and poor quality of life.
And I'm again getting just more and more positive reinforcement. Oh my gosh, your body's amazing. I mean, it changed drastically in this contract. The guests, oh, you're the girl with the 6-pack. Again, it was just like being ingrained of this is my identity. So without this, there's no worth. And it kind of then started tying in heavily with the self-worth and identity part of me. Now, after that contract, again, if you haven't watched my story, I moved back to New York and booked my first national tour. All of a sudden, it's like I didn't book anything when I first left New York. This is honestly because I just wasn't as mature as a performer, a dancer, a woman than when I got back from cruise ships after 2.5 years. But at the time, I didn't know that. It was like, I left looking a certain way, and I came back with just like a really thin, super ripped body, and I booked the first thing. I was like, this is what people want. So it was, before I went on that national tour, I actually had a 2-week stint up in Niagara Falls for like a quick Christmas show I performed in. And during that time is when I lost too much weight. Like I was heavily on supplements. This is now like I'm spending hundreds of dollars a month on supplements, pre-workout, amino acids, 3 different types of proteins. And then I'm taking like CLA, L-carnitine, multivitamins, which some of these things aren't bad. Like multivitamins are great and fish oil is amazing, but I was just it just fed into the obsession is really what it was. And this control again. But I was really getting myself into a situation where we got to eat at the buffet in the casino we were performing at for free. And it was like, they have nothing I can eat, because I wanted everything to be calorie countable so that I could be accountable for my calories. Again, obsession and control. So, just a ladle full of food. I was like, I can't count that. So I would start eating stuff like I would make a salad with no dressing or mustard. And then they had hard-boiled eggs in the morning. I would like hoard a bunch. And I was like, I can count the eggs. And then they had shrimp cocktail, and I would like only eat that. And so that's what I lived off of for about 2 weeks, of protein powder. I remember that's when like I came home and my family was like, the hell? Like I was very skin and bones. And then I started my Rock of Ages contract. And this is where I did not miss one day in the gym. The show was heavy cardio. And we were in lingerie for most of the show, so I'm very exposed on stage. So then it's just like even more obsession. And I mean, I remember just pinching any little bit, and it was like if I could touch skin, I would freak out. And because I was living on the road, because our lunch stops would be in a mall and I didn't have any food options, or I was in a hotel, and so it was like eating out all the time, I was like, well, my only option is oatmeal, protein powder, and protein bars, because I could control it. I know on the package what it says, how many macros, what the calorie count is. So I would only eat that so that I could know exactly where I was for the day. And it got worse and worse. It was just this obsession. Now, tour life is very difficult, and you're not on your own schedule. You're living in hotel rooms with no kitchen, on buses, having to eat out. Theme of the video, control. Control plays heavily into this because, again, it's just like your life and schedule is very out of your hands. I just continued to get this positive reinforcement. And my cast members who were on tour with me would always, oh my gosh, like, you're insane. Your body's crazy. And like that was these just positive little like zaps and dings of reinforcement. And then I would go to different gyms, like whatever city we were in, we would all find the gym and go. And people would come up to me constantly and be like, oh, when's your competition? I'm like, what do you mean? They're like, you like are comp ready? And I was like, oh, I don't compete. I'm just going. And I kind of realized at one point, I was like, oh, I'm living at competition level, which even in the bodybuilding world, as unhealthy as that is, they do it for like 2 weeks prepping for their competition, and then you kind of deload your diet and get back to, gaining an additional 10 pounds, because it's very unhealthy to be at the percentage of body fat that they have to get to and what I was at. I believe I did get measured at one gym and I was around 7% for a woman. Not good. So yeah, definitely I haven't had a period at that point. Like I did as a teenager, but once I moved to New York, I pretty much lost it for a long time. Rock of Ages, yeah, that's where it got intense. And I did get a lot of positive reinforcement as well from my family. They weren't so much like, my mom was skeptical. She's like, you're getting really thin. I think you're getting too thin. And she hated that I was eating not food. Like, I was like, I just eat protein powder. My dad was more enamored with the dedication and like muscular. I mean, it's still like, there's some photos I'm like, okay, that's impressive, I guess. But, and the relationship I was in, I was getting positive reinforcement. And then it was kind of like, oh, what you need to work on next is this part of your body. You should build that up and thin that out, and kind of felt like I was being a little molded. But it all just was kind of like, okay, good. Yeah. So, it really stuck in. I would say after the tour, I moved to Vegas, trained all day. I started, because I got my first apartment, I was actually able to finally cook and finally meal prep. This is when like the orthorexia hit in hard, because I was eating like only white fish, grilled, nothing on it. Like I wouldn't even put olive oil on it because calories. Spinach, tilapia, oatmeal, cottage cheese, protein powder, egg whites only, salads with mustard on it. Like that was pretty much my daily diet, and I would just eat the same thing every single day. And then I'd have a Quest bar to take with me to the gym or something, and like maybe an apple. But as I said, I remember even on the Rock of Ages tour, I had so many struggles with like, I would eat an apple and like feel so guilty. Again, looking back, it's crazy because that show is such high cardio, especially for the ensemble girls. The amount of calories I had to have been burning, and I was trying to stay below 1,300 calories a day. That makes me so sad. Again, you can see I laugh because it's very uncomfortable for me to just like admit these things that are really not great. But yes, I 100% remember I was tracking, and I was trying to stay around the 1,300 calorie, and I had to be burning so many. The way I was working out at that point too, I was doing these programs that were, you literally would go to the gym and just like not stop, like jump rope for a minute and then lift the weights, and then jump rope for a minute and then lift the weights. And then I'd go to the next one and do like my 10 rows, and then I would do a minute of burpees, and then 10, like I did not stop. If I had to pee during my workout, I would get so irritated because I'm like, I have to I'm stopping and I need to just not stop moving. And then I was doing, 1 to 2 shows of Rock of Ages a day. It's just insane, that 1,300 calories. But not luckily, but I was on the tour bus a lot, and there was a lot of like sleeping time. So I definitely had to sleep a lot because I was very tired because I was not eating enough. Yeah, in Vegas, I was in the gym 6+ hours a day and still being pretty damn strict on that diet. So it continued into my contract in Montreal, into my contract in Germany. I would say, I'd like to say I had pockets of chill. Like I would let myself eat the schnitzel in Germany, or, but I still was obsessively working out and trying to find, I remember like I found I think it was in Munster around Christmas time, I found a supplement store, and I was like, the Holy Grail. And I just like stocked up on protein and bars and was like, okay, we live off of this again. But it really wasn't until I would say I booked my like dream job. I once I got my Cirque du Soleil job at Love, which was like just had been my constant goal, I finally pumped the brakes. It was like, okay, I would still eat like really healthy, and I will say this to this day, like I genuinely enjoy eating healthy meals, not eating. I love salads. I'm such a bunny rabbit, but I have that balance. Like I still will go out and eat something at a restaurant, or my salads have dressing on them now and cheese. Wow. I do feel better when I'm eating nutritious foods, but that's because I'm actually getting the nutrition, which before it's that orthorexia mentality where you restrict yourself so much because you're like, I only eat clean, that you end up eating unhealthy because you're eating oatmeal every day, all day. But yes, I will say, I think just because I got that goal, I kind of was like, well, I did it. And I was 25 at the time, so I'm, changing a lot too. 25 is that age that you do change and you kind of get more solid in who you are. I ended my relationship I had been in, which I think, be it was intention or not, the way it was taken from my point was adding to my problem. So I kind of shed some stuff in my life and moved forward. Now, I still struggled with body dysmorphia. I still thought about it a lot. When I go through my phone, and this was 8 years ago, I still have like a lot of pictures I'm taking of myself every day to look at body progress. But I also was kind of at a point that I was like, okay, I'm, flying in from 60 feet every night and flying around at, 20 to 30 feet. I need to have strength. I need to have energy. And so I would start, eating more properly, because I was like, it's scary being that high. I have done shows where I'm up in the air and I'm weak, and it's not funny. It's not a settling feeling when you are 20 feet in the air and you don't know if you have the energy to stay up there. And if you fall, it's not good. And I had a couple of those moments in my career in different aerial performances I've done. And so I think I just kind of realized that like this isn't a joke, and this could be my life or death. Like it really got to that point. And I remember just having a couple scares, not energy wise, but just, wow, I'm really high. And so there was definitely a factor of that. And this was the first show also when I was in Love. This is the first show my stomach had been covered in years. The shows I was doing in Vegas before, I was in underwear. Rock of Ages, I was in underwear. It was just like this. I remember feeling so relieved that I don't have to go on stage practically naked. And that took a lot of the pressure off, a lot. So once I realized, I don't think I'm going back to that kind, I'm going to be here for a while. That gave myself some energy to breathe. I have this contract. Everyone's happy with me. I was like, okay. Started kind of like getting friends around me that loved me. Again, my friends always did it. It's not like I didn't have that support, but I think I was able to just turn it around slightly. I definitely still at this point would fall into bad habits, but I wasn't throwing up. I was working out too much still and had to find that balance. That was very difficult. But I also, it's interesting at this point in my life, started binging on the weekends. Like I switched into, I don't do that anymore. I eat what I want. And I remember the first time I went on like a little 3-day getaway with one of my really close friends, and she was like, brought her stuff to go to the gym and was expecting me to eat egg whites every morning. And I was like, no, we're not going to the gym. This is my break. And I eat everything now. And she was like, oh, this trip's gonna be fun. And like, we went down to Mexico and I was just like, I got to live. And it was so nice to have that permission. I'll never forget that trip where it was just like chips, guac, quesadilla, margarita. And I was like, it's fine. Now, it wasn't like this all happened overnight. Like my 3 years at Love, it definitely had this kind of back and forth. And I feel like because I lived such a restricted life for so long with it, that the pendulum definitely overswang the other way and I kind of overcompensated, where I feel like I was eating and drinking way too much on the weekends at Love. It just, yeah. And I did gain. There's a phase, my face is just never at a point in my like, oh my God, I'm fat, but I put on a lot of muscle weight, but I definitely can see where I'm like, oh, I just started chilling around here, and it's great. I needed to do that and kind of go to the extreme on the other side. Now, I'd love to say that that's when it ended, but the pandemic did kick in this back. And again, it's that control thing where I got locked up. It's kind of like, okay, well, I'm not eating out. So all of a sudden I got to control what I eat. And I was like, well, if I'm here, I could mold myself back. So I probably lost 20 pounds during that time and only ate veggies. I went vegan for that year because I was like, I just want to see what this is like. So started eating vegan, worked out all day. And again, the positive reinforcement started coming in. And I was just like, okay, this is good. And luckily after that, well, no, not luckily, so that definitely brought in some stuff. And then when things started opening up again, I would, weekends or here kind of eat what I wanted, but I still was pretty intensely working out and pretty strict when it came to how I fed myself. And it was definitely a body image thing. And I was starting to fall back heavily into those habits. The thing that really changed all of this for me, my time at Cirque really helped me get out of that, but it wasn't enough to not fall back into it, was in 2021, my first job that I landed, I suffered 2 back-to-back brain injuries. I'm still dealing with them today. That will be a whole nother video later that I will talk about my concussion journey. Fun! But I always say everything kind of happens for a reason and there's always a lesson in everything. And my concussion recovery really taught me so much. And I had to sit down for a year and just be. I couldn't work out at all. Very depressed. And I kind of just had to find new gratitude. I couldn't move and work out the way I used to. I still can't. And that's okay. And I also want to enjoy my life. And so finding that new balance through kind of having everything taken from me and stripped from me, even the ability to go for a walk. I couldn't drive. It was, a lot of everything was taken from me for a while. I remember just sitting and being like, I don't even know what I like. Like, I just felt like my whole identity was lost. So I got to rebuild that up. And in doing so, I also got to find new grace for myself. That was probably the biggest lesson I learned, was how to slow down and give myself grace for where I'm at and what I'm going through. And very difficult. I'm still, I still struggle with that today. And this will be something that I always struggle with. I am a go person, but in doing that and getting through the beginning of that injury, and it's still lasting in 2 years later, it really gave me an opportunity to re-look at my life and re-look at what's the point and what's really important, and be grateful for what I do have. And kind of through that lens is how I was able to heal myself. And it was a long journey. I'm still on it. I still find myself slipping up here or there. I think it'll always be something that I struggle with, but not to the intensity or degree I used to. So I'm very lucky now to have some very close people in my life that not only support me, but kind of check me. My current relationship is very supportive, but it's someone that's like, you're not eating enough, or, you know, we need to feed you. And if I'm like, I want to go to the gym, and if it's, you know, something that's affecting me, or it's like I'm not having a good brain day, or my body's not right, you know, I'll be like, you need to rest. Like, you're doing too much. And it's nice to have that surrounding, and it just reminds me, you know, you need daily reminders. And so surrounding yourself with things and people and environments and habits that do that and keep you on the right how to your why, that's what it is. And once you figure out the why, just know that there is a different how to get there, if that makes sense. So yeah, it's sometimes waking up out of these nightmares is an even worse nightmare. That's kind of what I went through. Is once I had this really bad accident, it just rewired my brain, and it gave me the chance to look at everything through a different lens. And that's when everything just changed. And the sense of relief, it's crazy. I've even changed what I think. I think everybody is amazing and beautiful, and we're all so unique and different. And so, you know, I can embrace that. And it's funny. It's now even when I'm like, oh, I like my lady curves, because now that I'm healthy, it's like my womanly, I'm in my 30s body has come in, and it's so different than what I had and achieved. And there's moments I'm even like, oh my God, if my 22-year-old saw me now, she would, you know, flip out. But I'm like, I love it. And I love who I am and what I have. And it's fun. It's fun. It's not only fun, it's just a lot of weight lifted off. And it really is that feeling of freedom, like being out of that internal prison is great. And therapy has helped me a lot through it. Therapy's great. Journaling is great. Even journaling through the bad, you know, it's a good tool to be able to now reflect on those journal entries and see the growth and see again that outside perspective of where I was at. And it keeps me in check of the happiness I'm in now. So that is my whole story. It's a lot, I know. Thank you for listening, if you stayed with me this whole time. Also, if you are struggling or know someone that is, there are plenty of hotlines, helplines. I can post them down in the link. Definitely, you know, it's not a weak thing to ask for help. It's courageous and it's brave to stand up and say, I need help. So don't be scared to do that. And if you want to share any stories or have thoughts or comments, don't forget to leave them down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts about things. And again, I'm always here to reach out to if you just want to connect with someone so you don't feel so alone on this crazy journey, not just in entertainment, but this crazy journey of life. All right, until next time.